I think with any kind of risk scenario, you have to understand that risk completely. And that means understanding the implications of a changing environment at an urban scale. In the case of the Mediterranean, the number of coastal cities that are potentially impacted by sea level rise, by coastal erosion, by exposure to higher intensity meteorological events, these kinds of things, those are quite clear, and the implications, the risk implications, are reasonably well articulated. That is the common ground that I spoke of earlier. The common purpose, of course, is to find ways of mitigating that risk or minimizing that risk over the long term. So in the sense that we focus on environmental issues, I think for the most part on the climatic side of things, things are fairly well articulated. But there are other environmental issues, the issues related to pollution and as a result of cars and autos and that type of thing, and industry, those types of things I think are less well articulated. And in environmental terms, I think that those risks need to be better dimensioned and better understood at the city scale than they currently are in some parts of the Mediterranean. So, and then the third point of this is that, well, how do we start, and how do we start to understand that stuff? And what's the nexus between the physical or built part of the city, the infrastructure that you spoke of, and the city as a whole, is also understanding the city as a system, or if you like, a system of systems. But our approach is to look at the analysis of risk and the planning for resilience from the perspective of a universal urban systems model that applies anywhere, any city, anywhere in the world. Yeah? And it looks at four primary components of the system. The first is the built environment, what you spoke of, the buildings, the infrastructure, the transportation networks, these types of things are all part of the built environment. And the stakeholders are both public, in the sense of government, or governance organizations, and they're private. We use as a rule of thumb somewhere between 70 and 80% of the total assets of all cities, roughly, is held in the hands of private parties, whether they're companies or corporations, or they're you and me, the individuals. So it's important that we understand that this built environment implicates quite a wide range of stakeholders who use that. Okay, so that's one, the built environment. The second is the spatial scale. All cities are located somewhere on the planet, and they have spatial dimensions that are very important when you understand risk. The risk for those buildings that are right on the coast and across from the beach is far higher than it is for those who, for example, in Barcelona are up on the mountain from climatic risk and from other kinds of risks as well. So there's a spatial dimension. The third is that all human settlements exist for the reason of the providing of different functions or flows. Okay? These are not just governance issues. It's the flows of resources. It's the flows of water and energy and traffic and commerce and these sorts of things, as well as the functions of governance from a public point of view and from a private point of view. So there's a functional dimension. And the fourth, and that's the most critical one in terms of engaging people in the city with the development trajectories of those cities, is organization. And when we talk about organization, we talk about organization as associations of human beings, of people. Okay? The smallest organization is the individual. But we have organization in the form of formal public institutions, institutions of governance. But we also have organization from the point of view of non-governmental organizations, civic movements, political movements, associations of people who either make decisions or influence decisions in the city. All right? So understanding the city as a system, four key elements, and these apply anywhere in the world: the physical, the functional, the organizational, and the spatial. And this helps us to understand the city as a system and to look at risk from the perspective of those four elements. And to do that, it's complex, it's complicated, but it helps us to understand how do we prioritize what to do first and what to do next, and how do we prioritize the means and ways we generate the resources that we need to do those, to implement those priorities. So, going back to your question, which is about environment, first we need to understand environmental challenges within the context of all risk. That's the first point. The second point is that at city scales, we need to understand the implications of those risks, including environmental risks, within the context of the urban system. And that helps us to integrate the actions that we make, ensuring that the right stakeholders are in the room, that the right functions are being addressed, that there are planning and development trajectories that take into account the risk in spatial terms, and these sorts of things.